Hello, hello everyone. I was trying to talk with the mic closed and this is not good. Hello, good afternoon. Open your mic too, Rohit.
Yeah. Hello,
Ready?
everyone.
Show your slides, please. Okay, make it big screen. Thank you very much. I think you're the unique person that uses Canva for the presentation. You can do whatever you want, but
Yeah,
it's nice. Okay, how are you, Rohit, today?
I'm fine, and you?
Perfect. We are also right here. I think it's 4 p.m. exactly in Spain, Central European summertime, and in India it's now 8:30,
7:30.
7:30. I remember 3 hours and a half, and with some kind of festivities. I think you have today here.
Yeah.
What is this festivity?
We are having Eid that is celebrated just after the Ramadan.
Good. So first of all, as always, thank you, Rohit, for taking your time in preparing this presentation, creating an efficient model-based architecture for Flutter apps in Liquid Galaxy projects. Thank you for preparing the presentation and for giving the presentation today for your colleagues and whatever uh, people want to listen to us now, live, or later in YouTube. Um, so I think this is the almost there is only another one presentation remaining. Later I will make a reminder, but we are almost ending because every day we are near of the final day for the GSoC. That's a terrible question. All day long waiting for this day and it's coming. So it's your moment. I leave the stage to you and you can start your presentation. Thank you, Rohit. You can start.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So, a very good evening to all present here. So, let's begin. So, during the whole journey of your development process, you might have find a lot of projects in Flutter, in Android, or even building any software programs. So you see that different people use a different type of architecture to specify or to just that is goal specific what you want to achieve in there. So so today we're gonna see efficient module based architecture that we will implement in our Flutter applications, and that architecture you can use for building several applications and even for Liquid Galaxy projects. So let's begin. Here are some table of contents that we're going to follow. First is why we need actually an architecture. Next, why what is exactly an architecture, and in there we have some sub points that we'll see in, later while presenting you. Next is how to implement projects using the clean architecture, and the fourth is some challenges or flaws when you have to use this, when you didn't have, etc. So let's move towards the first thing, that why do you really need an architecture? So architecture is just like arranging, or just like how we arrange things in a clean manner so that it can be easily maintainable, it can easily be scaled, etc. So it provides developers with a way to organize code that encapsulates different business logic, the core logic that your applications have, and keeping it separate from the other, clean architecture. Uh, sorry, keeping it separate from other delivery mechanisms. So here you can see a diagram. This diagram is represents the whole clean architecture thing. So we'll come to this again in a moment. So let's understand this a little more. So clean architecture provides a way to structure the applications, and that separates the different components of an applications into different modules, now each with a well-defined purpose. So the main idea behind this clean architecture is to separate the application into different three main layers. The first one is the presentation, the second one is the domain, and the third one is the data layer. So every layer have its own functionality, and every layer is independent of each other. So there is a point that you need to remember, that each layer is separated from each other, and one layer didn't know what happens in the other layer. So in this way, when we try to communicate in the application, it is very much helpful while you test your application for different test cases, or when you want to scale the application to a larger audience, or even when you have to provide the code to other developers so that they can contribute to your code. So the clean architecture is very much useful in all these scenarios. Next is let's understand it through an example. And this is a very common example, and you might have done this before also. So everyone went to a restaurant. So let's imagine a restaurant where you just go in, and the kitchen and the dining table are just at one place. How messy it will look. And even you can't just stay there, because there's no better there is no better cleaning or everything such like that. So in a restaurant, when we go in a restaurant, the kitchen, or we can say the engine, is basically separated from what we are having the dining area. So we as an end user went to a goes to a restaurant and sit in the dining area. Now we are a end user. So, and here the restaurant is just like an application. Now we went there, we order some food, the waiters comes in, goes to the kitchen, then it comes back and serves the food. So here you can see that the different layers are having all are separated. So once you go into the restaurant, you order something on the table, then the waiter comes in, and the waiter here, if you uh, see here, the waiter just acts like a mediator between the kitchen and the end user. So we will see what exactly this waiter here in the case of an application. So in this way, the different components of the application are separated, so that when we want to scale something, let's say that tomorrow the owner wants to add a food. So when you add a food, let's say that he add a food in the menu. So there is no effect on how the waiter takes the order and serves the customer. It didn't affect it. The affected area will be the kitchen. So when that order went to the kitchen, the process is different, everything is different, but it doesn't affect how this waiter is serving that product or that food to the customers. That will remain the constant. Similar is the approach of our case. When we divide the application into different layers, we the different layers perform different functionalities. So uh, when we iterate one functionality, it doesn't affect the other. That's why we use a clean architecture. Okay, so the next thing is the core concepts of the clean architecture. It is very necessary to understand some of the core concepts. The very first thing is the dependency rule. So as I have already discussed it with you, just like the waiter didn't know how the food is prepared, it just knows that he have to take the order and serve the food. Similar in the concept of software engineering, we have different modules or components that works together, similar to different parts of the restaurant. Following the dependency rule means that higher level modules now comes to this picture again. If you see, this is the clean architecture picture, and you can see that this is the blue layer. This is the blue layer, and it is the outermost layer which interacts with the user. This is the only layer which interacts with the user, and it is the highermost module. Next comes our controllers, or this green level. So this serves as an intermediate between the data that we are fetching from the internet or the local servers and the end users. The next is use cases and entities. So these are the lower based modules, and this is called the domain layer. We'll study this a bit more. So if you see in this picture, here we have the three different layers. The one is presentation, the domain, and the data layer. So the presentation layer contains what we know as the UI layer, that where user interacts. The domain layer consists of it acts as a mediator between the presentation layer and the data layer, so that the transition of the data should flow from the UI part to the data layer without any interruptions. The third one is the data layer. So data layer have only the work to fetch the data from the internet or from the local servers. So coming back to the dependency rule, so we have just like we have different modules or components that works together. So dependency rule means that the higher level modules, just like the UI module that we are having, like the user interface or the application logic, should depend on the abstract concepts. Uh, just like this waiter didn't know how to cook the food. It just knows that he have to take the order and serve the food. Just like the UI layer, it didn't have to do anything with where the data is coming from, what it is doing, anything, nothing. It just needs the data which need to be displayed. So this is called the dependency rule, where the layers are not dependent on each other, and it doesn't care what the lower level modules or the upper level modules does. So here you can see that wait staff doesn't need to know how the dish is cooked, etc. Let's move to the next concept, which is we call it as abstraction layer. Now, the abstraction layer basically dividing the whole application into different fragments or different, we can say, the layers. So these are like as I've already discussed, these are presentation, the domain, and the data. So we will very much do the coding also in these layers only. And the presentation layer, as I've already discussed, is the part where the user sees and the user interacts with the application. And this is the most important layer, because this is the only place where the real things happen. The next is domain layer, which acts as the intermediate between the presentation and the data. And the last one is data layer, which have the functionality to fetch the data. So let's say that you want to test your application for different test cases. Now let's say that you have implemented this clean architecture rule and you want to test something. What happens is that here the domain layer, since it doesn't depends on the data, what the data and how the data is fetched. So we can create something, or we can even change change the classes or functions, and it doesn't even affect the presentation or whatever it is that is displayed to the user. So in this way, we can achieve this functionality to test our data. And also when we want to scale it, this is very important for. Next is components. So what are like components? So these are like modular and reusable parts of software system that encapsulate the specific functionality or behavior. So components are typically designed to be self-contained with well-defined interfaces. So if you are using the application, or if you have made any application in the Flutter fetching the data from the servers, you might have used what we call it as models. So models which parses the JSON response and then convert it to the Dart models or the Dart classes. So this is, and this we call it as entities. Next is use cases. Now, what is use case? I will discuss it when we are creating the project for the Liquid Galaxy controller. A simple Liquid Galaxy controller that will that will define everything that are presented here. Next is the controllers or presenters. So when you are using, so just like if you are building the application, if you have built the application, uh, the Liquid Galaxy controller, you might have used provider, or you might have even used the block. What are these? These are your controllers or the presenters. So these are something which helps in the state management. So whatever, like if there is any network state or not, uh, if there is a data or not. So whatever there is, it controls or presents. Next is interfaces. Again, interfaces, we'll see how this works when we are building the real application. And finally, the data models. Okay, so there's theories everywhere. We need to, now we are going to implement our application, a simple Liquid Galaxy controller, in order to understand things. Okay, so this is my application which I have built yesterday, and I will going to show you how we are separating each modules and each folders into different segments, and how each segment is communicating with each other. So it is very important to understand this. Okay, so first let me show you the demo how this works. Okay, so this is a very simple interface because I just want you to learn the process, because you can easily build the UI segment. There's a lot of videos on the Liquid Galaxy channel itself. You can watch and implement that. So it is just for the test purpose, and just to show that, yes, this works really cool. So these are my Liquid Galaxy rigs. So let's say that I provide the username. I guess these are not, and I click on this, so it goes to normal window. So I have given the username, the password as LG, and the IP address. You can let me zoom it a little. Yeah, this is IP address 192.168.201.3. The next is our port number. So when we connect it, so let's say that we connect it. Okay, so again, let's say again connect it. Okay, so we can see that this is a green light. This means that it is connected to the device, to the LG Rex. Now, uh, okay, so when we click on show place on the map, let's zoom out a little. Okay, so this implements a function which is called as show places on the map, and I have defined the place as Mumbai. So when we click on show place on map, that is Mumbai. So let's click in there, and we can see that it takes us to the Mumbai. Okay, so this is the final output of the application. I know the UI is not good, but just for the demonstration purpose, and here I'm going to explain you like how you can divide this uh, different sections or different modules, and how you can communicate each module with each other. So if you can see on my screen, so here we are having the library folder, which is the common in every Flutter application. Next, I have created a module which I call it as a LG controller. Next, we are having the different uh, modules. The module which is data, which is domain, and the presentation. Again, we are in the data. We are having one module which we call it as repositories. And in the domain section, we are having again repositories and the use cases. Next, in the presentation, we are having providers and the screens. So you might be wondering that in order to implement just a simple application, why you have done that so much of work. So it's because for smaller applications, it is a little time consuming to do. But when you want to scale the same application to a bigger level, then you need a definite or approach in order to implement every functionality in your applications. So better when you start doing or whatever you do building your applications, try to use small segments of clean architecture, or even you can use the MVVM pattern, which we call it as model view model. So, but today we will be seeing how this is separated into different segments. So just like here, you can see that in the data section, the data, domain, and presentation, as we have discussed in our presentation, just like here, we're having presentation layer, the domain layer, and the data layer. So the similar is the case here. So we are having the data layer, we are having the domain layer, and the presentation layer. And these all three are separated with each other. So the very first thing that we need to implement in the application is to connect it to the LG rigs, because connect is the first thing that you need to do in order to run other functionalities. So let's say that okay, so here I have a screen which I call it as setting screen. In the setting screen, if you can see in the screen, yeah, this is the setting screen where I am taking the username, the password, the IP address, and the port number. So these are four different text fields, and you can easily create it. You might have created earlier also. So here you can see that these are my simple implementation where I am having the text form field and user. This is I'm having text form field, uh, another text form field, and I in this similar way I have four different text form fields. Yeah, just like that. So the first, this is my screen. So we will start with the we'll start with data layer, which is the repositories. So if you can see here, I'm having an abstract class, which I call it as SSH repository. So in this abstract class, so whatever function that you want to implement, let's say you want to implement the connection, or you want to implement the locate place, or even if you want to show KML, etc., anything that you want, you can place this in the abstract class. Now, why we are doing it? We are doing it because we want to keep it separate from the other layers. So we can create a class which we call it as a repository class. Even if you are fetching the data from the internet, you can create a repository class where you define different functions. Let's say you want to show some pictures that is fetched from the internet. In that case, you need to create a repository, and here you're having different functionalities. For example, fetch the picture or get details about the picture, etc. So in our case, it is connect to LG and locate place. When you create a repository in the SSH repository.dart inside the domain module, just remember this is inside the domain module, you can implement the same. You can now use this repository in the data layer. Now here we will implement the repository that we have created in the domain layer. So in this way, we are following a separate separate um, the separate concerns for each of the layers. So this is a class which I have defined, the SSH repository implementation. Now this implements the SSH repository which is inside of our domain layer. So let's say that you want to create a project where you need to fetch the data, the same project. Here you need to implement the repositories, and in this place you can override the abstract methods that you have defined. So this is connect to LG and this is locate place. Now for this project, we are going to use the providers. Uh, you can even use the block, but for implementing a simple project, block seems to be very lengthy some process. So it's better if you can use the providers. So if you see, this is my repository, SSH repository implementation. This implements the SSH repository. So the very first thing that we have overridden is connected to LG. So when you implement this one, it will given like here it will suggest you to import the overrides. So these are the two overrides. One is connect to LG, one is locate place. So here I have defined client, because if you want like for connection you didn't need a client, but for other things just like locating a place or showing a KML or showing a balloon, etc., anything, you need the SSH client. Okay, now let's see the flow, how this goes on. So we have overridden the function connect to LG. Next thing is now we'll create the socket. So here I'm defining the socket, and here there is a function which I call there is a function in Dart SSH2. Okay, so just let me show you one more thing in my perspec what are the dependencies that I'm using. So it is first Dart SSH2 for interacting with the LJ rigs. Next is the river pod, and next and these are some stuffs like Google Maps, etc. But these are actually not used in the project, so you can leave that. Okay, now let's come towards the implementation section. So here we are having connect to LG. First we'll create the socket as I'm having as the Dart SSH2 contains the SSH socket, and then a function called as connect where you need to pass the IP address, the port, and the timeout that you want to check if that connection is established or not. Once it is established, it will give you a debug print which is called it an IP and port. It will display basically your IP and port. So if you can, I can just show you if it is connected. Yeah, connected to. So if you can see on my screen, this is connected to 192.168.201.3 and port number 22. So means that when we click here on the connect, we basically, so this connects us successfully and then prints the results, just the IP and the port where we are connected. Okay, righto. Next is and it in the return it will return us a socket, or either it will return you an exception showing that it is failed to connect. Now let's see where this functionality. Okay, so we have implemented the repository that we have created in a domain layer of the section. So next thing that we need to define here is the use case. Now coming back towards what is use case. So when you creating some features for the application, let's say that for an API project, you are creating a feature to fetch the images. The second feature may be that you want to upload a picture into your profile. That is another use case for your application. So just like this, we're having different use cases according to the project requirements, according to what you have, and and something like that. So in our case, when we are connecting to the Liquid Galaxy, our one of the use cases is to first connect to the Liquid Galaxy rigs. So in the use case, if you see, I have imported the SSH repository, and it will take and I've defined a constructor, and which we call it as connect to LG use case, just like the class we are having. Next is here we have defined we have created function future, and it will return us a socket which is SSH socket. Next this is the function name and the all IP address, port, username and password that will be provided by the user. So this now again we create a socket, and here now we will use now we will fetch this function which we defined in the repository part, connect to LG. Now you see that in our domain layer, since when we're connecting it connect to LG use case in this module, in the domain module, you see that we are fetching the abstract method, we call it as connect to LG. Now now the application here doesn't know that how this is implemented. It just knows that okay, there is a function which we call it as connect to LG, and once we have connected it, okay, so there is a function which named as connect to LG. The application just knows, the domain layer just knows that, okay, there is a function, there is a abstract method connect to LG. Rest, it doesn't know how that is connecting and how that is operating. So That's why we are separating it, the domain module with the data module. So in future, let's say that you want to change something into your any of the functions. Sorry for the interruption. Okay, so this is the socket, and this is the connect function. So in this way, we separate each module from each other. Okay, now let's move forward. And here in the repository, I am calling the function which we call it as connect to LG. And here we are having IP, port, username, and password. Next, we will return the socket. And if everything goes fine, it will return you the socket, or else it will failed to connect, that is E. It will throw you an exception saying that it is failed to connect. So it is very necessary to understand why we are doing this, because you can easily implement a simple class. You call it as ssh.dart. You implement the functions. That is very easy to do. But see here that what we are doing, we are not just directly fetching the classes or how that particular function is implemented. We are we are fetching the abstract methods. It just knows that I have to fetch the abstract method. It doesn't have to deal with what we are doing uh, inside of our connect to LG functions. So in this way, we create a separation of concerns. So this is regarding the data layer and the domain layer. Next comes our presentation layer. Okay, so this is the use case, and next comes your providers. Okay, so now here we are having different providers. Now I have already told you that you can use anything for state management. It might be your block, it might be uh, providers, it might be qubits, etc. Anything that you are more comfortable with, you can use. But for my suggestion, if you want to implement just a simple project, then you can use the providers. It is much easy to use and also takes less of your time. So in this section, the SSH providers.dart, just in the presentation layer. Now this presentation layer is separated from the domain layer and the data layer. So the SSH providers.dart, here we have defined several different functions. So sorry, providers. The first one is connect to LG use case provider. The second is locate place use case provider. Again, you might doubt that why, Rohit, you are doing this. We can just simply use simple functions and implement that. Why are you making this so complex? Again, I tell you that for simple, for if you are creating an application, you should follow this approach, because you don't know when you have to scale that application, and at that point of time you might need to again restart the whole application. So following a good architecture is always a good process. It In the beginning it might take time, but you will be happy using that. So here I'm creating two different providers, connect to LG use case provider and the place use case. So I have to first see the connect to LG, what it does. So this function connect to LG use case provider, it first takes the SSH client that we will send it from our from the presentation layer or from the screens. So this is a provider, as I've already defined. This is a provider, and this is connect to LG use case. So if you see, the provider is of type connect to LG use case. And what is our connect to LG use case? So this is our connect to LG use case. So the provider is of type connect to LG use case. So just like you define every provider, you give a reference, and then uh, here you here we need to define the repository, and then the SSH report, and then again the implementation where you have done this. So if you see, this is our implementation, SSH repository implementation, where you have implemented the SSH repository and overridden the functions, which we call it as connect to LG and locate place. So very well. Again, let's go back to access providers. So here, this is a provider which is of type connect to LG use case. And again, we are now calling this class SSH repository implementation and passing the SSH client. Now, if you see, this is a connect to LG use case, and I'm returning the this use case connect to LG. So if you see in the connect to LG use case, we are using this repository, which is of type SSH repository. So that's why we need to pass in the constructor the repository. Okay, so here we are passing that one, which is SSH repository. And again, you can see there are a few more providers like the connected provider, the SSH client provider, and we'll discuss when we'll be in the screen part. Okay, let's move to it. So what we have done till now, first of all, whenever you want to implement a project, just create a domain layer, data layer, and presentation layer. Go to the domain, add the repositories. The if you are like using the API or something, then of course you can use the models. You can create a new section here, new module, and call it models. Now parse the JSON response that you're getting from that particular and implement it and convert it to the Dart objects. Okay. Now let's move to the settings screen. So again, as I've shown you, there are 4 different controllers for a username, for password, for IP controller, port controller. Again, you can create a different providers. You can create different providers for username controller, password controller, IP controller, port controller, as it initializes the values in the beginning, and it will also helps you changing the data in the future. So just for the demonstration purpose, I've took the controllers here in order to extract the information that is represented in the text fields right there. Okay, so this is my build method, and if you can see here, I have this where is connected data. So this is a variable which watch. Yeah, one more thing that you need to remember, whenever you are using the providers, you need to implement the consumer stateful widget and the consumer state of type setting screen. So whenever we use providers, we need to define it not stateful widget, but consumer stateful widget, so that we can get a reference of each widgets. Um, just like here, you can see that ref.watch, and it will, what it does is it will keep watching the connected provider. And what is connected provider? So you can see this is a state provider of type bool. So whenever there is a change, okay, whenever there is a change in connection, it will represent you this. So it will change the data automatically. So when it is connected, so I can show you the logs also. If let's search here, is connected. So you can see that initially it was false, but after some time, when it is connected, it becomes true. So in this way, the providers watch every data, and whenever there is a change, it reflects uh, suddenly and quickly. And this is all because of the consumer stateful widget and the consumer state. Okay, the next thing is the screens part, and these are all simple things, the text form fields and all. Okay, in my application, you can see this username, password, the IP address, and the port. So, and the 2 buttons also, one is for connection, one is for show place on the map. So when you came down little, here I'm having an elevated button, and I named it as connect. And here, if you can see, there is on pressed. And inside of this on pressed, I'm calling a function which is called as connect to LG. Let's see what this. Okay. Now here, now connect to LG is the place which connects where everything happens. So let's understand this. First of all, since it is a function that will connect and give us a result, so it must be a async, because we don't want to do uh, because we don't our applications to get logged in or getting freezed in between while connecting. So that's why we have used async here. Now, in the presentation layer, when you are creating these screens, you need to you need to define each use case. So whatever use case that you are uh, defining, let's say that you want to uh, fetch the photos. For that, you need to create a use case. So you need to define in the screen sections or in the presentation section. If you can see that here I am again reading this provider. So connect to LG use case provider, and again since we need to pass the SSH client provider. So connect to LG use case. If you go back, what it takes SSH client. And again, I've told you why this takes SSH client. It even you can remove the SSH client, but why we are taking it is because uh, when you go into the implementation section and inside of this locate place, so you can see there is this requirement for the client. So that's why to so after connecting, when we get the provider, we can pass to this repository section. And that's why from the LG connect to LG use case, we are defining that inside of this provider, we are defining the connect to LG use case. Sorry, the SSH client. So you can see this is a SSH repository implementation and is demanding a SSH client. That's why. So going back to the settings screen. So first of all, this is a provider and I'm reading this connect to LG use case provider. And since it is demanding a SSH client, so since the SSH client provider is what we have for when we get connected. So this is SSH client provider to pass the SSH client. So again, we create a socket, and when we use the connect to LG use case, we define inside of this connect to LG use case, we are having a function which we call it as connect. So let's go back there. Connect to LG use case. So you can see there is a function which is named as connect. So inside of the screen, when we have created the use case, we call it this connect function. And inside of this, we pass the IP controller, the port controller, and the username and the password. Now, we'll check. Okay, so what it does, if you see here, it basically returns you a socket. Now, so it will return you a socket. Now, we'll check if the socket is not equals to null, then we can update our providers. The first one is SSH client provider. Whenever there is like whenever they connect successfully, we update the providers, and here with the socket, the username, the password request, and the password. Basically, what we does in all of our applications. Next is I have created one more provider which I call it as connected provider, and it is a Boolean type. So you see, this is a bool type. Okay. So I'm also updating that the state of this Boolean provider, which is a connected provider. And in this case section, since it is connected, so I'm providing it with true. And then we are making a snack bar and saying it is connected to LG. Let's say that if I have this, uh, let's say I change the IP address to 5 6. Then what this happens? See what happens. So I guess there is uh, so whenever there is a connection or the connection didn't happen, then it will show another snack bar and which shows this fail to connect. So in this way, the connect to LG functions work. So you need to first call the use case, then you need to define. You need to pass the parameters into the function that you have created inside that, and then you need to update the providers as usual. So this is our connect to LG, and this is inside of our this button, which is we call it as connect. Next is elevated buttons. The next one is like locate place. So let's go back. Yeah. So first of all, what we have to do, go to the repositories of the domain layer, and here we are having a locate place. Now this locate place, again, you can create as much functions as you want. Now, if you have defined this function or this abstract method inside of this SSH repository, then you need to override this also. Where it will be overridden? Where you have implemented. So in the data layer of inside of the repositories, we are having SSH repository implementation, and it implements the SSH repository. So coming down here, we are having a locate place. So this locate place, I'm getting a place, and whatever place it is, it will this command, it will execute this command and will show us the place. Okay, so this is the implementation part. Now since this is again another use case for our application, so we can create another use case for this. So this is locate place use case. So here we are having again we are taking the repository because we want to get the function which call it as locate place. That's why we are passing the repository in this case. So here if you see that we are again passing every repositories and defining each of them like separately. Like here we are passing the repository sections inside, a separate creating a constructor of this. The more easier way to do this is to define the get is to like there is a get for Flutter, and where you can inject the dependencies, and you didn't have to worry every time where this repository will come from or etc. And you can explore several projects on it. It is readily available on the GitHub, or you can also even explore the uh, documentation sections for that. So the next thing is the locate place, and here we are having repositories, and then we call the function is locate place, and we are passing the place here in the place, and then in the section we are returning this session. So let's see where this locate place is implemented. Yeah, so very well, this is SSH providers, and again we need to create a provider for the locate place. So I'm creating a separate providers for each of the use case, but there are several, since I've already told you that there are different several methods. You can even implement more easily than me. So it's like everyone in, you need to follow the architecture, but you can implement the methods as you want. Just it uh, follows the concern of separation, such like every layer is separated or independent of each other. So here we are having the another use case provider, which is locate place. And this is again a provider. And here we are passing the locate place use case. Inside of this, we are taking the SSH repository and the implementation section. So which are having locate place inside of this. So inside of this implementation, I have locate place. Okay. So again, we need to pass the repositories locate place use case because this class demands the repository. So we need to pass the implementation that we have done to this SSH repository. Okay, let's go back to the screen section, and Let's see what this does. This is the locate place, and here again we are reading the locate place use case provider and passing the SSH client provider. So whatever the SSH client provider is in the beginning, if it is not connected, it will be null. And if it is connected, then it will return you a SSH client. So this is a session. And again, we use a locate place use case, and we call the function which call as locate place. Inside of this, we are passing the place. So if the session is not equals to null, then it will print whatever output we are having. And if it is null, then it will print the session that yes, it is null. And we were calling this locate place. So here is the locate place. So when you see in the application, this is the show place on the map. So this is the elevated button which shows place on the map, and in the inside of this on pressed, we're having locate place, and we pass the uh, place which is as Mumbai. So in this way, this whole project is separated into different layers, and how each layer is connected. So you can see that there is only a single link which connects these two, one the data layer and the presentation layer, and these are providers. You see, this is the SSH repository implemented, which is in the data layer, and this is the use case which is inside of the domain layer. So you see that these are the mid, just like the presenters, or in the section here. Yeah, these are the controllers or presenters. So it basically helps you communicate between each of the sections. So this is connect to LG use case and locate place use case, etc. So yeah, so where you are LG controller, then data, domain, and presentation. Okay. So whenever you are creating a project, try to implement this functionality inside of your application, as it really helps you scale. Uh, Now I have explored. Now this is a very large topic. The more you will research, the more deeper you go. So try implementing simpler projects, then move forward and use some complex methods, just like the block that I have stated, or even you can use the providers in the beginning, or whatever suits you best. So this is the project. I will give it the link in the Discord channel itself. So that's all for this. Now the last thing that I'm going to discuss with you is just like some of the challenges, or what are the limitations of this clean architecture.
Rohit, sorry for interrupting you. Uh, I didn't know if you remember that today we have a tight agenda because at 5 p.m. we have to start with the next session. So you have 7 minutes,
Okay.
not much.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, okay. No worries. So this is the last part that we are going to discuss. These are some of the challenges or the limitations of the clean architecture. So again, as I have stated you that these are not for simpler projects, because these are like you as you have seen the things that we can do in just two classes, we need to implement 5 to 6 different classes. So again, you need to research, you need to see what your project is about, you need to have a not proper knowledge of what you're gonna implement into your applications. So again, as I've told you that these are little complex, but starting is you can start it, because in industries when you go and work there, it is a required feature, and you need to implement everything following their architecture. Again, there's you need to have a longer development time, but it takes the time in the beginning, and after that it will get causal with you, and it will help you in your future development process. Okay, so that's all. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I will share every resource in the chat sections. So thank you again. Uh, Hello, Andrew. I'm done.
I know you're done, Rohit. Sorry, I'm on a phone call. 1 second.
Oh, okay, okay. No issue.
You can continue for a minute.
Okay, sure.
Perdona, ¿eh?
So, so just remember that to what, however you separate your project, whatever you will use, you need to separate each and every layer into, and so that each and every layer is independent of each other.
I'm back.
So that's all.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Could you please
Can I?
stop sharing your screen?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Rohit. Sorry, I just got a call when you were finishing, and I have to attend.
No issues.
What else? Let's see if any of your colleagues have a question. Shaunak, Peter, Manas, and the other people on the chat. We'll wait for a minute, and then in the meantime, as usually, I'm gonna try to show you. We have a session in starting now after you with Shaunak Nagrecha. He's gonna talk about frequently asked dupes by Liquid Galaxy contributors. Shaunak has made a research about many of the questions the contributors have usually, and they are sharing. Oops. They are talking in the Discord or whatever other system. Let me show Shaunak slide. It's on the screen now. And again, we almost finished. Shaunak Narecha, you are next, Shaunak. We'll wait for a second for if there is any question. Maybe people today, as you say, are slow because celebrations, but this is the day we have for this. What city do you live, Rohit?
What?
What is your city?
Mine is Kolkata, West Bengal.
I am Calcutta. Okay. Good to know. Small city.
No,
How many millions
it's
people live
metro
in?
cities.
How many millions live?
It's one of. No, I came here for study, for doing BTech.
Okay. It's one of the biggest cities in the world.
Yeah.
Very good. I think there are no more
You should
questions for
come
today. So let's gonna close this today in this moment. Rohit, good luck. As I'm saying to everyone, we are near of the completion of the announcement of whatever happens for GSoC. Thank you very much for your time today, for preparing the presentation and for doing the presentation. And see you soon,
Thank you,
hopefully.
sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Bye.
sir, for giving me the chance.
Bye.
Bye.